There are two different things that are two things that are completely different are reality and our own perception of reality. And just because we see something that is, very convincing to us, we swear we heard this, we saw this, we felt this, that doesn't mean it's entirely true. I mean, watch any magician for 1 minute, and you'll see how easily our eyes can be fooled, our ears can be fooled. There's a lot of information that our brains miss, and it likes to fill in the gaps however it can.
Yes, that's true.
And we have to be aware of that as investigators. We have to be willing to accept, hey, maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I'm not seeing this right. Maybe I'm not hearing this right. And we can't be afraid to ask someone who might not agree with us, what do you see? What do you hear?
Well, we do that. But you know what? We are into the top of the hour. We've got a little news break coming up. And for everyone who is listening, thank you so much. I hope you've loved this first hour because trust me, the second one's going to fly too. But we will be back, and I hope you catch a little good news in here today.
Support for NPR and the following message come from PBS, presenting The Facebook Dilemma, a frontline investigation into Facebook's impact on privacy and democracy that asks whether it's uniting or dividing us. Tune in or stream starting Monday, October 29th at 9 on PBS.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Louise Schiavone. A caravan of about 5,000 Central American migrants is making its way through southern Mexico. Their destination today is Tapachula, Mexico. From there, they will continue north to the U.S. border. Reporter Emily Green has been traveling with them.
The caravan took off at 5 a.m. from the southern Mexican border. Many of the migrants had been walking over the last week from Honduras, although others were already in Mexico. Their goal was to make it 20 miles north to Tapachula. By 10 a.m., it was swelteringly hot. Still, the thousands of migrants continued forward. Moms breastfed their babies as they walked. Dads pushed strollers. 3-year-olds put one foot in front of the other, despite utter exhaustion. Leila Poala was walking with her 5-year-old daughter. She and her family have been traveling for 3 days from Honduras. She says she wants to reach the United States, God willing, but if not, she will stay in Mexico and work. For NPR News, I'm Emily Green in Tapachula, Mexico.
European leaders are calling the killing of Jamal Khashoggi shocking and a violation of international law. Terry Schultz reports the governments of Britain, France, and Germany warned that efforts to clarify the death so far are not credible.
European Union Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini calls the circumstances of Khashoggi's death deeply troubling and a violation of the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, which requires obeying the laws of the host country. Mogherini says the EU insists on the need for a thorough, credible, and transparent investigation and accountability for those responsible. In a joint statement, Britain, France, and Germany say the explanations given by the Saudi government would need to be backed up by facts to be credible. They also suggest their future relationship with Riyadh is on the line, saying decisions will be made based on the explanations they receive about the killing and, quote, our confidence that such a shameful event cannot and will not ever be repeated. For NPR News, I'm Terry Schultz in Brussels.
Iraqi leaders have signed on to a lucrative arrangement with General Electric and the German company Siemens to develop Iraq's power infrastructure. This after intense maneuvering, NPR's Shannon Van Sant reports.
Siemens had been the frontrunner for a reported $15 billion deal with Iraq to supply the country with power generation equipment. But after pressure from the Trump administration, Iraq's government may give some of the work to U.S.-based GE. According to Bloomberg News and the Financial Times, U.S. officials warned Iraq's prime minister not to move forward with Siemens, and that if he did so, U.S.-Iraq relations would be at risk. Alongside the GE deal, the U.S. has also reportedly signed a broader agreement to help Iraq build out its energy sector and make the country energy independent. Shannon Van Sant, NPR News, Washington.
This is NPR News. In Afghanistan, 11 civilians have died in a roadside bomb blast. Jennifer Glass reports that IEDs are one of the leading killers in Afghanistan.
The family was traveling in a station wagon near Achin, a district that borders Pakistan, when their car struck a bomb planted in the road. All 11, including 6 children, were killed. These kinds of explosives take the lives of 1,000 Afghan civilians each year and have been condemned by the UN because they are indiscriminate. No one has claimed responsibility for the blast. The area in eastern Nangarhar province is home to both Taliban and Islamic State fighters. While the bomb may have been planted for military vehicles, as so often happens here, ordinary Afghans were the ones killed. For NPR News, I'm Jennifer Glass in Kabul.
The U.S.-led coalition fighting Islamic State forces struck a mosque in Syria. A coalition statement reported the strike crushed an insurgent command and control center, killing a dozen fighters. The coalition stated that while the law of war protects mosques, the use of the mosque as a military command center nullified its protected status. The attack was reported by local media. Charles Wang, a technology company founder and former owner of the New York Islanders hockey team, has died. He was 74. Wang founded Computer Associates International in 1976. He bought the team with a partner for $190 million. Before that, he'd never been to a hockey game. 2 years ago, Wang sold most of his interest in the Islanders. I'm Louise Schiavone, NPR News, Washington.
You are listening to WPHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Welcome back to Fate Magazine Radio. When someone is having a glitch in the matrix, as it were, they start to get really panicked. And everything appears to be frightening and paranormal, right? That's when we get the calls.
Right. Well, you know, the big thing is the paranormal is not, it's kind of like we were talking about earlier. You know, there's the normal process of things. There's our, as an individual, we each have our own level of understanding and comprehension of how the world works around us. The paranormal is something that is a glitch outside of that normal operation, or at least outside of our comprehension of it. And you know, there are a couple of different reactions that we can take. You know, we can take a logical approach to it. We can take a problem-solving approach, or we can go into full-on panic mode. And, you know, that's something we have to remember, though. It is a glitch that we're trying to track down when we're talking about paranormal occurrences. The thing about glitches is A plus B doesn't always equal C. We can't predict when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. And, you know, that's something that we have to be willing to understand. And we have to keep in mind that the paranormal is unknown. So just because we think we have an idea of what it is doesn't mean that we're right. You know, for instance, that reminds me of a case that we worked here just a few years ago that three paranormal teams had went in before us and investigated. We were the fourth team going in. The 3 teams that went in ahead of us had told this family, you're going to have to move. You've got this negative entity attached to you, and it's attached to this property. And I think one of them told them that he needed an exorcism, and they'd done exorcisms, they'd done house cleansings, they'd done all of this stuff that, you know, had the poor guy was on the edge of a nervous breakdown. He was terrified.
Of course he was.
You know what it ended up being when we investigated? It was his fish tank.
I remember that.
Nothing paranormal at all going on there. It was an infrasound frequency put up from his air filter for the fish tank vibrating against the wall. And it was putting out an infrasound frequency that was affecting everybody in the house. After we corrected the positioning of the air filter and set that right, all of a sudden all of the ghosts were gone, and he didn't need to move. He didn't need an exorcism. Um, you know, and that kind of correlates back to our comprehension of the world around us and how it works. Because it's so easy when we don't understand something to panic, to jump to conclusions, and that's something we can't do. We set ourselves up for failure when we do that.
Every time.
Yes, it's something that that's just a dangerous reaction to have. But a lot of people say the most primal fear in humans is fear of the dark, but that's not exactly accurate. The most primal fear in humans is the fear of the unknown, which is why we're afraid of the dark, is because what's in the dark, we don't know.
Exactly. It's one of those things that I heard someone say that was what their dad had taught them. When they would ask if he was afraid of anything or if he was afraid of the dark, how could he, why did he lock the door and do all these other things? And he told them that he wasn't afraid of the dark. He was afraid of what he could not see in the dark. The same analogy. I find that interesting because I'm not generally afraid of being alone or being in the dark or anything like that. My worst nightmare are snakes. So, if there were a snake in the dark, well, then I would be afraid of the dark. But it's just really fascinating how this human psyche works with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out there. So many people in the paranormal they're caught up in tunnel vision, and they are all focused on dead people, ghosts, dead people. Oh, well, let's go to this place because a lot of people died there, so it must be haunted, or that place is old and abandoned. It must be haunted, or let's go to the graveyard because God knows graveyards are crazy haunted, which is all nonsensical. And I mean, just speaking of graveyards, I mean, seriously, why would you stick around in a graveyard?
I don't understand that either, because there's no logical reason unless you told somebody you would meet them there or something. I don't know.
Right. That there's so people get so fixated on dead people, creepy things, scary things, and they forget that the paranormal is not like watching a Hollywood horror movie or a TV show. And matter of fact, what most people, I mentioned tunnel vision because so very little of the paranormal actually involves dead people.
Truth.
That so much more of the paranormal is directly linked to living people. But yet, a lot of people in the paranormal forget about the living people. They're focused on the dead people where a lot of people died, and all this. And you had to think about it. One of the craziest things that I see teams do is these people will say, every night, it it might be the wife that calls us. Usually the men don't call us. Usually it's the wife because the husband's not going to talk about it to anybody most of the time. And they'll call us up and they'll say that every time it's just The kids are when the kids leave, it's just me and my husband sitting here.